It's the Tim and Renee Real Estate Talk Cigar Show.
Hey, so good afternoon, folks. I'm here with Renee, my real estate advisor, or my mortgage advisor. I'm the real estate advisor.
We advise each other.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm Tim Jackson with Berkshire Hathaway.
Renee Candler, Root Mortgage, here in Clackamas, Oregon.
Yeah. And so we're going to be smoking some Oliva Melanio Maduros. We've got a box of these puppies.
Check out the packaging.
Yeah, look at this. It's got this fancy ribbon. And look at that.
Look at the cedar sleeve. Oh my goodness, how pretty.
Bam. So the invite is always open. I know that not everybody's a cigar smoker, but should you be, oh man, and they're box pressed. Look at that.
They are.
That really extends the draw of the cigar. So this might be a 2-hour video. But I always want to extend the invite, both Renee and I, to get together and get a cigar, get a cup of coffee. And speaking of cups of coffee, this is kind of a trial, but in about a month, if you go to Refuge Coffee, 92nd and Foster, you're going to find Renee and I's face. I'm actually going to get really close to show you this wonderful design. So you're going to see Renee right there with his info, and you're going to see, let's get a good zoom on that. You're going to see me right there, and look at that beautiful artwork with the cheesy pun, and that's where you get it, is Refuge Coffee House. So yeah, let's light these puppies up and just get a first taste impression. You got one?
Yeah.
We got 3 cutters.
It smells so nice too.
We've even got the Oliva branded matches to go with it.
Speaking of which, we're looking for sponsorship. So Oliva, if you're watching these videos, not only do you want to buy a home with us, you also want to sponsor these videos. So feel free to give us a call. You saw our numbers. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
They're looking for a 1,000 acres for tobacco plantation.
We can find that in Oregon.
Yeah. Might not just be the best crop of tobacco you've ever had, but we've got better vineyards than, I would say, tobacco farms here. My grandpa actually had a tobacco farm in Zambia, but tobacco in Zambia is a lot better suited for cigarettes.
I honestly don't know the difference between the tobacco you grow for a cigar for a cigarette.
Yeah, so I mean, like, cigars, typically, they sometimes use the same leaf, which would be called a puro. But a lot of the times the leaf is a tobacco leaf, and then what they put inside is also tobacco, obviously, but the
filler tobacco is what
yeah,
they say on the inside.
the filler and the leaf are sometimes different origins.
Yes.
So you can have, the leaf could be from the Dominican Republic and the filler's from Nicaragua. But it's all about, I think, the soil and the right type of climate for the type of tobacco leaf. Because you've got like Virginia tobacco, and then you've got pipe tobacco, which, and it's all cured differently as well. I've done a little bit, but I wouldn't call myself a tobacco expert. Just enough to kind of figure out there's different tobaccos in different regions they're grown in.
What a great flavor. This is nice. It's my first time having the Oliva V Maduro. I've had the Oliva V Melanio, and that's been such a robust flavor. This is nice, and maybe it's because we're pairing it with the hot chocolate from Refuge, but it's good.
Yeah.
No, it's a spicy mocha, isn't it?
Spice mocha, yeah. I wonder what they use for the spice. Probably chili powder.
There's a little bit of, what is it?
I asked him at one point. I think it's kind of a. I think he puts chili powder in it, if I remember correctly. Mm.
Well, speaking of refuge, the coffee house is really pretty. They roast their own coffee, don't they?
I think they get it from a locally sourced company. I'm not. I don't think they roast their own, but they are connected. I think the name stems from it. Is that both of them worked with Portland Rescue Mission and the Homeless Outreach Ministry before they founded Refuge, and obviously 92nd and Foster being where it is. I've seen just as owners and as people. They have homeless people coming by and they'll give them free cups of coffee. It really is a refuge in more ways than one. And just their philosophy of being in Lentz, which is a harder neighbor. I mean, I live 5 minutes from Lentz and have a similar neighborhood. It's a harder neighborhood to operate in, to live in, and to be around. But at the same time, I think it's encouraging to see people doing it in a manner where they still see people as people, and there's not this disgruntled, man, we've got to put up with this homeless guy again.
Well, they also live in Lentz, so not only do they have their business there, but I heard from them that it's important for them to be where they work. They truly want to be a representative of the community, and not just be someone that goes to the community to support. They truly wanted to know what it feels like to live in the neighborhood.
Sure.
It's a great spot.
Yeah. I mean, that's where my church is too, is 87th and Woodstock. And I definitely feel when we bought our first house here, being 5 minutes from it, there was a little bit of coincidence and just houses were cheaper in this area, but being closer to the community, and even if it was a little bit of a sacrifice, maybe we could have gotten a nicer home or a nicer neighborhood. But to me, where you live is kind of so many different factors go into it, and one of the factors we'll be talking about today is sure, there's the safety and the demographics that go into a neighborhood, but there's also the community you're plugging into, and I think
school.
Yeah, the school, and being a former principal of a couple schools. I mean, you were at what, Woodstock or Woodmere?
I was at Woodmere, and so that is the school, I believe, for your kids if they were to go to a public school.
Mm-hmm. And then you were also at Lentz Middle School?
I was. Well, it was a K-8 when I was there. Yeah, so Brentwood Darlington is the neighborhood that we're currently in right now, which is the neighborhood that Woodmere serves. Woodmere is a K-5 Portland public school, and it has one of the more diverse, the most diversity in its student population in the district. Mm-hmm. And so that's the beauty of this neighborhood, of Brentwood Darlington, of Lentz. You do have diversity because, as some of you may know, and this is something that's just close to my home because I was one of those kids. My mom left Puerto Rico when I was a baby.
Right.
And what you see in this neighborhood, which I love, is you see people coming from different countries that are sacrificing themselves to be in this country because of what this country has to offer and searching for that better life.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have folks that are coming here with no money, able to afford in certain neighborhoods like in Brentwood, Darlington, or at Lent, until they get to establish themselves, and then they get to buy.
Right.
And a lot of those families do decide to stay in this neighborhood because of what this neighborhood has to offer. And so, I think we have to be very conscientious with the words that we use. Words do matter. I remember when I was the principal at Woodmere, and I was at Woodmere from 2013 to 2016, people called it felony flats, and I think you can still hear that today. But what does that mean? And when you say things like that,
well, it's misdemeanor Meadows now.
Is it? And so, and you got to be careful because
yeah.
you have children that are being raised here,
right?
And that's not true for them.
Yeah.
Right. This is where they're being raised. This is their sanctuary, just like your kids, right? This is where they're being raised. This is where they're being protected.
Yeah.
And so when I say that words do matter because you do have to be conscientious of the things that you say. Be real, so understand where you're moving into and see what the pluses and the minuses are.
Right.
And invest because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Instagram's got the geographical locator for felony flats, and it's 500 feet to the east. So there is this realization that you know, the neighborhood comes with this reputation, whether or not it's deserved or not, is, you know, I've seen both good and bad in the neighborhood, and I would say the good outweighs the bad in a lot of ways. I think one of the biggest things for me is that, you know, yes, we could move to a safer neighborhood or a neighborhood that's less, um, you know, maybe rougher around the edges than Brentwood. But I think the big thing is that my kids also have this education that a school's not going to teach them, is that they see people um, for what they really are, and there's this sense of like we're not hiding or sheltering them from what, you know, really happens out in the world. Which I think there is still this certain like notion that you should protect your kids and make sure they're sheltered, but I think too much sheltering can also have the opposite effect. Like if I were to move out and get my own acre and live with my kids on a self-contained farm, would that be, you know, the best experience for my kids, or is putting my kids at least in a, you know, still a safe environment, but one that they're having to wrap their heads around the bigger issues that this world's going to throw at them at one point or another. I mean, for me, I don't want my kids going out when they're 18, insulated and kind of callous to the world, not really aware that the world's got bigger problems than the fact that their iPhone broke, you know?
Yeah, when my children were first born, I prayed asking for me to help keep them as innocent as possible, as long as possible. And you're right, there is a balance to that. You know, I do believe that if my kids find themselves to be in a safe place, that if they are as innocent and don't understand some of the things that they learn in middle school or in high school, right? If we can preserve that innocence, there's a childlike desire that I think we as adults have to wish that we didn't know some of the certain realities. And so I thought, and I still do think to a certain extent today, that if I can keep my kids that innocent, it's something that will go away. It will eventually be taken from them because they're going to learn it.
Yeah.
And I do want them to learn it through me, but that would be naive to think that that's always going to happen.
Right.
They are going to learn it through their friends or through the many devices and vices that exist in the world.
Yeah.
But once they lose that innocence, they'll never get it back.
Right.
And so if I can help keep the innocence longer in my child, I think that would be a good thing. But yeah. I don't know. I guess I'll find out.
Yeah. Well, I think there's three different types of parents. There's the parent that is carefree and lets their kid run out into the minefield and the mine goes off. And then there's the parent that, you know, stands behind and yells at their kid to avoid all the mines, and the kid gets so stressed out that they step on one. And then there's the parent that holds their kid's hand through the minefield and says, this is what the world's like, but I'm also going to shelter you and make sure that, you know, we're going to make through this and it'll be okay. Yep. So I think there is, you know, there is that aspect there. But kind of transitioning into like, because I think this is kind of, I mean, maybe to get to the point or to really speak about why are we approaching this topic is, folks ask this question when they say like, Tim, do I buy in Multnomah County? I mean, they can look up the statistics. We're at the highest homicide rate since we just broke the record in 87. We're on track to match last year's homicide rate in Multnomah County. An ounce of meth has been decriminalized, so there's certain consequences that have come with that. And there's a lot in Multnomah County that's kind of coming to a boiling point right now that do have a lot of people that are in the community and invested in the community, including myself, but people that have been here for far longer. And some of them are finally saying, look, this is enough. I'm going to move to Clark County. I'm going to move to Washington County. I'm going to move to Clackamas County, where the schools, the local officials, they don't allow the endless camping, and there's this sense of safety and security that they, and the long-term protection of their investment as well is, I think, another key factor. So these are kind of all things that people are talking about right now.
Yeah, for sure. And being in Portland, being in the metropolitan area of Portland, what we also hear about is the privilege that some of us do have. And so there is a reality. There is a reality that some families have more accessibility than other families.
Yeah.
There is the reality that because of the systems that we have, some of us have more privilege than others, and some of us choose to exercise them more than others. That's not a part of our conversation. I think it's just reality.
Right.
And knowing that those systems exist, knowing that that privilege exists, how do we then use our skill set to be able to provide support for those families, those clients that come to us looking for the support that they're looking for?
Right.
That's the way that I like to reframe the thinking. As a former educator, as a former Portland Public School administrator, I can tell you that there's beautiful things happening in probably the neighborhoods or the schools that people think lowest of. And it's because either of reputation or because of where the neighborhood is. And yet you see this beauty, you see this treasure that is inside these schools, mainly the kids.
Let's speak about that. What was your experience at Lentz and
Woodmere?
Yeah, Woodmere.
Yeah, well, I'll start with Woodmere because Woodmere was a slice of heaven to me. I got to Portland in 2013, and for many of you that don't know this, I am a Chicago Public School student, teacher, assistant principal. Speaking of privilege, I believe that even though I am a male Latino raised by a single parent mama, and you could put whatever statistic you'd like to just on that, I was privileged enough to have a strong, independent mama that brought me with her wherever she went because it was just the two of us. And I saw the racism and the sexism firsthand. And it wasn't that. That was powerful, right? It wasn't that was more powerful. What was most powerful was seeing her responses as a result of the racist and sexist comments that people would just throw at her. That's when I learned the importance of emotional intelligence, the importance of understanding what's coming at you, how you can control yourself, respond, and move forward. Because there were times where my mom didn't get an application to rent an apartment because there was no husband next to her. She then educated that person and walked away and found the apartment that was in a nicer neighborhood, in a better spot, because she knew what her worth was. And so the first thing that I would say, for any educator or for any family member, a mom, a dad, you are powerful. You are powerful more than you know it. You have these beautiful children that are next to you, that are learning from you, that are watching you and listening to you. And more importantly, seeing how you respond. And that's some of the beauty that you get to see in a public school, not just Portland, but any public school.
Right.
You get to see the responses that people have.
Right.
That they can show, even the children are showing the adults, that it doesn't matter if they have a native language that is other than English. They have two languages. How powerful is it to be able to speak and support two different communities because of two languages that you speak, right?
Right.
Or to be able to live through adversity. Whether it's fair or unfair is a different conversation, but to live through adversity, learn from it, and respond to it as a result. And of course, you see the intelligence that people have, and if you're really honest with yourself, you see the absurdity or even the ignorance that you have, that you make because of where children are learning or because of where people live. And so that's some of the things that I've learned about myself and about others, but more importantly about myself, how important it is to reframe the way that I think, to understand what my assumptions are and why do I have that assumption, and then how do I go from there.
Yeah. And I think on the flip side, you say that there's bright spots, or there's kind of this notion that a bad neighborhood in a school district that's maybe looked down on a little bit more actually has some very thriving elements to it. And I think going to North Clackamas, being in the North Clackamas School District, and going to a high school such as Clackamas, where it very much is that ideal suburban high school that folks put you in, or that parents kind of flock to, I think there's a lot of people that fall between the cracks. And at least my experience with public high school was that just because this name carried so much weight. And there was some really great opportunities at that high school. Don't get me wrong. The Sabin Schellenberg,
Yes.
that was a very great opportunity, and I got to learn just about anything I wanted. But I mean, there was people that I saw kind of on the sidelines, and it was just because they went to an affluent high school doesn't mean that their family life was thriving, and that they were, you know, destined for greatness. And I think there is a lot of this notion that if a parent puts their kid in the right school, then that's it. Wind up the clock and set them free. I mean, that's kind of the saying that went with Catholic schools for the longest time, is that parents would just put them in the Catholic school to behave, but then there was no sort of parent-child involvement that kept the relationship going. And so I think it's just, yeah, I think a parent has to be very mindful of how they're framing the question of where is my kid going to school, and like you were saying, answering the deeper question at first of how is the parent going to be involved in this and invested in this kid's life from day one, so that they are set up to succeed. I personally believe that there's not a single school system that you can put your kids through. Kids are resilient, and I think parents, as long as they're helping guide their kid, there's just any number of school programs or school districts you could plug your kid into and make it work. I mean, now that being said, like with you being a former school principal and myself having 4 kids, I mean, you've had to ask these same questions of having kids. You definitely want to ask, where is my kid gonna be best? Because it's also down to the parent and the child's, you know, kids learn differently. I'm finding out that my second oldest might have dyslexia, so it's really about asking what's gonna also serve the kid best,
For sure.
and what program is gonna make them not only succeed but exceed, and not just, you know, the state standardized tests, but like what is it that's going to set them up so that 20 years from now they're going to be like, man, you know, everything wasn't like great, but at least, you know, I was given this opportunity and this platform. So I think it's all great questions, and knowing the different programs and schools and areas is one reason, especially when you're looking to plant roots, is why you talk to both Renee and I and get, I mean, I would say we've probably got our own diverse opinions on what schooling's like, enough that should a prospective home buyer come to us and say we're really wanting to plant roots, but we've got kids and we want to know, what do you guys think? I mean, my kids would go to a private Christian school and yours go to public school.
To North Clackamas, which you just mentioned, where I was also a principal at, and so I got to see the strengths from both districts. You know, I think that there is amazing things that Portland Public is doing that North Clackamas isn't, and vice versa. And you know, that's not a knock on either one of the districts. It's just reality. You know, when, for example, parents who have the opportunity to buy a home are going to make decisions based on their family. They're going to see, okay, where's my kid going to succeed at? And when you have the opportunity to do that, you do that. And the same thing with districts, with a district's perspective, or with a school that's in a specific neighborhood. What are the needs of the community? And how do you use your resources to support those needs and to build on those strengths? And so it's a reality that we all face. It's a give and take. It's an ebb and flow, right? And so if or when anyone watching this video is looking to buy a home, then why not use resource that can help, not just with how a loan program works or what's the best place to buy in specific neighborhoods. It's also the questions, the intangibles that maybe another pair can't answer. Like, what school would you send your children to if you had the ability? What do you know that this district does well? Or do you know what this school is doing? What programs are they have? Is this something that's going to support my children? We can get those questions and we can help answer those questions.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And we thought, I mean, our oldest started school in 2020, September 2020. So there was a lot of big questions we were asking back then, is do we want to have our kid doing school on a screen? And the schooling system has really been shaken up by COVID. I mean,
Sure has.
I had a half brother up in Seattle that barely got through because he was not showing up to the Zoom classes and he was just playing video games. And so I think COVID's both opened up an avenue for parents really like noticing their kids are at home now and they're like, oh shoot, my kid's not doing as well as I thought, or they're doing great. But it's also opened up this avenue of the different methods of schooling. We were looking at homeschooling, private schooling, and public schooling all at once. And I think they're all something that at least a parent should consider. And I think all of them have their valid points.
At the end of the day, we have to be conscientious in how we point the finger. Because it's really easy, especially in this media-driven world or in these devices that give us this instant feedback, to be able to say, oh, this is happening because of them or because that decision was made. You know, and I think that there's a little bit of validity behind that, right? I mean, it is true to see what's happening around the world or around your world, your community, and try to decipher as a result of the decisions that are happening what you want to do. But you have to be real with yourself. And you have to understand how you're responding to that. You have to pay attention to the things that you're saying or doing that either make the reality worse for you or make it better for you. And that's something that's been ingrained in my head for a very long time. How am I responding? What's my responsibility here? What words did I use or did I not use? Why is this person responding this way to me? Is there a way for me to be able to help de-escalate the situation? If not, then what are my next steps? You know, those are the real things that sometimes we have to do as individuals to better the situation around us. And that applies in school, and that applies with finding the people that you want to be around that can support you in whatever your goals are.
Right.
All right, so step back. How's the Melanio v. Maduro?
It's really good. It's definitely, you can taste Maduros are a darker leaf and a darker smoke.
And ironically, not ironically, but strangely enough, sweeter.
I do taste a little bit of that sweetness. It's not as dark as, like, I've had a triple Maduro before, and that's kind of like it kind of burns the hairs out of your nose and off of your chest.
Tim, this is a smooth smoke. I'm able to
I'm actually
exhale through my nose.
Yeah.
And it's smooth. There's no spiciness to it.
Yeah. It's not this punch you in the face Maduro. I mean, I would tell most folks that are starting out with cigars not to go for a Maduro. I would say go for a Connecticut, which is a lighter smoke that you can have with a summer beer or a cup of coffee. But I'd actually say for being a Maduro, if you were ever to be like, all right, I've smoked a couple that were Connecticut's and now I want to take the step up and try a Maduro, this Oliva Maduro might be a very good entry point. And there's also Maduros I would point you away from and say, like, wait until, you know, you don't jump to the strongest whiskey after you've had your first taste of beer, you know?
Yeah, and I gotta say, Tim's a pretty cool guy. He went to Refuge Coffee and brought us these spice mochas. So was there, what was the thinking there? What made you choose the spice mocha? Was it because of the cigar?
Yeah. I think partly the cigar. I mean, I think the spiciness was really going to complement the just kind of strong flavors, and it, for whatever reason, spice mocha and a Maduro, I think it worked out well, and in my head, it sounded good, and in actuality, it's also a very good pairing.
It is a very good pairing. It tastes really good, and the spice mocha tastes delicious, so they did a great job at Refuge.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they're great people, and I'm really glad that I've got that 5-minute drive to a coffee shop. I go there probably on average once or twice a week. I go there for a lot of meetings, so I mean, if anybody does want to go meet at Refuge or smoke a cigar, both avenues are open, and we'd love to have you. I think we've met at Refuge a couple times too.
We have, and I love that area. I do. When I first moved out here in 2013 from Chicago, it was wonderful to be in an area that reminded me of home. And it wasn't necessarily what I saw, it was the feel, right? I love the feel of the urban electricity, the energy that exists. And so when I moved out here in 2013, that's where the old, it was called the new Copper Penny was, right? And now all that's gone, and you have these big skyrise apartments or condos or whatever they are. You have all these different restaurants and coffee shops, bars.
Yeah.
It's an eclectic,
Yeah.
really cool area.
Yeah. It's funny watching the time lapse of kind of a micro part of the city just develop over time. Because even though I went to Clackamas and, you know, maybe had a more privileged upbringing, I didn't actually have the best family life, to be pretty blunt. And so I had kind of, you know, the stories of the fairy tales where there's this idyllic upbringing. And my parents did a great job. It's not really a slight on them. It's more just like, for summer, they were just kind of like the hard knock parents, though. And they'll agree. They're like the hard knock parents of, you know, you might have a nice home and be going to a nice school. We're gonna send you to. We went to the Lents Boys and Girls Club in 2005 as kids, and there was a couple summers we went there, and I actually, hindsight 2020, I actually really enjoyed the fact that I went to. And back then, you said the new Copper Penny. I remember driving by that, and Lents has definitely grown up since then. From, it was a pretty. There was kids that I was encountering at the Boys and Girls Club that were in situations that I, even now that I'm looking back on it, I realize they were talking about their parents using meth. They were talking about experiencing homelessness. They were talking about these very heavy subjects that as a third or fourth grader, I was, maybe that level of innocence was like, oh man, that's tough, and I sympathized with them. But there was, you know, there was this very real kind of education I was getting from being at this Boys and Girls Club that has since, I saw, maybe they've gone away, but a few years ago they had goats at the Lents Boys and Girls Club, which just shows you that it's kind of gentrified and turned into.
But the Boys and Girls Club is still there.
Yes.
It's there on, what is that, Harold?
Mm-hmm.
Harold, just east of 92nd.
Yep, yeah.
Is it called the Waddle? Something about Waddle.
Waddle Boys and Girls Club.
The Waddle Boys and Girls Club, yeah.
Yeah.
Which they also have an alternative high school that is run in that Boys and Girls Club throughout the day, which is pretty cool. I didn't know that either. I found out when I was the principal at Lent, because then we started to work together.
And it was actually a great place. I mean, they had so many different things that you could do, arts and crafts.
Yes.
I remember, the Boys and Girls Club, just in general, from my childhood, I'd gone to one in San Francisco previously, but the Lents Boys and Girls Club had all sorts of activities they ran. They would bring all different types of folks, like firefighters and stuff, like to come and say, hey, check out our machines and stuff. So as a kid, there was a lot of learning, regardless. So it was actually a really good experience, and I would say I loved my time at the Waddle Boys and Girls Club.
I bet they still have that connection because the firehouse is right there. The firehouse is right on the corner of 92nd and Harold.
It's got that cool Lens logo on it.
Yeah.
And you got the Portland Pickles right there. I mean,
Yes.
if nobody's ever been to a Portland Pickles game, it's a fantastic time, and it's really affordable. It's just such an accessible way to have a good time. I mean, go out, get a beer with some buddies.
It's cool, and if you like baseball, you really want to go to the Portland Pickles game.
Yeah.
Can I share a story?
Yeah.
This is awesome. So it's our family, Nikki, myself, our kids, along with a really good family friend. You know the kind of family friends, the ones that are family.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all sitting together. There's 10 of us because we have 6 kids in total. And we're watching the baseball game, and I love baseball, so I'm having fun. Of course, I'm drinking a beer, and the pitcher, I forgot who it was a Pickles pitcher. He was lights out. I mean, he was striking people left and right, so I was just yelling, strike him out, get him out, and just having fun, right? I was that fan. So after about 2 innings or so, the guy that was sitting next to us said, hey, my daughter doesn't want to say this, but she thinks you're the coolest principal ever. And so you got to be careful who you're around, right? It was a great situation, and it's a student that I still think of to this day. She's so cool, and the fact that her dad was that open to come and say something to me just made it even better. Fast forward a couple innings, still the same game. They announced a pickle juice drinking contest, and the winner got 2 free steak dinners at Sailor's. So I'm like, I'm in, right? Like, of course I'm going to do this. So I go over to the event. I'm there, and I look around, and they give us this red Solo cup, maybe halfway filled with pickle juice.
That sounds easy.
Right? Well, and I'm looking around, and there's 18 and 19-year-old kids, like 6 foot something, not college kids. I'm like, oh.
So you're going to down it as fast as possible.
Yeah, there's no way I'm going to win. And so they give us all the cups. They say, go. I chug it. I put it down. I look up. They're still drinking their pickle juice. I beat a bunch of college kids drinking pickle juice. Come on now, that's not right. So after that, I was the principal known as Pickle Man because I took down that pickle juice faster than any of those kids that were in that contest with me.
Pickle juice is kind of refreshing.
I liked it.
Yeah,
I thought it was great, and I got 2 free steak dinners at Sailor's, which they have really good onion rings. So if you haven't gone to Sailor's yet, you should go.
Okay, where's Sailor's?
Oh, it's Stark and like 100. So if you take 205 north, you get off at Stark and you make a right.
Oh, it's right there in the
maybe.
center 205 area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Close by.
I think I've seen it then. So, this is an experience I've had with. We're gonna switch to what the market's doing,
Yeah.
right?
Let's do it.
Because it's kind of the talk of the town, especially in the industries. And I've had a lot of buyers. They've been cash, everything from cash down to like low down payment loans. And I would say the resounding response from a lot of my buyers is, I really think the market's gonna tank in 3 months. So with that being said, I think prices of a home are one thing, but the bigger question is, do you think the real estate market is gonna be more affordable in 3 months?
In what way?
Assuming somebody's not paying cash, because cash is always gonna be, they only care about the list price.
Yeah.
But let's assume that we're talking a first-time home buyer.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking anywhere from 5 to 20% down loan, doesn't matter. But they are looking at the interest rates, and they're looking at what the market's doing, and they're looking at the inventory. And will the housing market be more accessible for them in 3 months? Do you think it'll stagnate, or do you think it'll get worse for them as far as that monthly payment? I think the focus is the monthly payment.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna process this out loud because there's a couple of things that I think people really need to realize, especially if someone is looking for a loan.
Right.
And that's the majority of us, right? The first thing is what's known as DTI, or debt to income, right? That's 6th grade math. It's an easy fraction. It is the amount of debt that you have every month that's leaving your bank account versus the amount of income you're bringing in every month. That's super important. Easy fraction. The numerator is the debt, the denominator is the income. So what we're looking for is a certain percentage, and that percentage changes depending on the loan program. So we could talk about conventional, FHA, USDA, VA, and talk about what those DTIs are. That's not important right now, but that's important to know.
What goes in and what goes out.
Yep, that's the first part. Second part is, how much money do you have for down payment? You could put as little as 0% down, but that's a VA loan, that's a USDA loan. So we're talking about 2 very specific loans. Or as low as 3% down conventional, which for those of you at home, if you want to buy a $500,000 home, 3% is $15,000. That's down payment. FHA is 3.5%. That's the other part. So we talked so far about the DTI, debt to income. That's one part we need to know about. The second is the down payment. And then the last piece that we want to know is the inverse of, the last piece we want to know is the FICO score, the credit score, your credit report, that number that is applied completely to how well do you pay off the debt that you borrow. Those are the 3 things that we have to look at. That is what helps determine the pricing and the loan product that your mortgage advisor will advise you on when you're ready to buy a home. Now that's that one part. The other part, or the question is it going to, or how's the market going to perform in 3 months?
Right.
Essentially, right? And I don't think either one of us has a crystal ball to say this with certainty. But what we're seeing is a combination of things that will slowly make it a buyer's market, I would say, within 3 months' time. What we're seeing is less inventory, right? Didn't we go from a 2.0 to a 1.8 in inventory from month to month?
Yeah. And I really want to track that number closely as far as seeing what does September bring us. What we're seeing is we saw a sudden surge of inventory. where we were seeing historically low inventory, then it jumped all the way to 2, and in August, inventory dropped down. So,
And is that new inventory or is that inventory in general?
it's what's currently on the market.
What's currently on the market.
Yeah.
And what we also saw was
Doesn't include
that
new home builds and contingent offers.
yeah. And what we also saw was that homes are lasting on the market longer in general.
Yeah.
So we're having less inventory from July to August, and we're seeing homes stay longer on the market instead of being sold as quickly as they were
Right.
just a few months ago.
Yeah.
And we're seeing interest rates going up.
We're seeing interest rates going up at an alarming rate because I think to a certain degree, the real estate market has already acknowledged that interest rates are about 5 to 6%. I think that's been baked into the prices of homes now, and we've started to see a slowdown of price adjustments, but what we're now experiencing is an acceleration beyond 6%. I mean, I think should
in
we
the
hit,
interest rate.
yes.
Yeah.
So I think should we hit 7 or 8%, we'll be having a new conversation about where our prices, because prices haven't baked in a 7 to 8% interest rate
When
yet.
we were having this conversation last month,
Mhm.
we saw July's numbers. And what we saw was an increase in home values of 10%. That was last month.
Now it's 8.6.
And now it's gone down,
Mhm.
where the values of the homes are 8.6 percent higher than what they were last year. So that figure is telling us from January to August of 2022 in comparison of the same period in 2021, the values have gone up 8.6%.
Mhm.
Last month in that same period, it was going up 10%.
Yep.
So we're seeing inventory go down. We're seeing homes last on the market longer. We're seeing values in home go down. We're seeing interest rates go up, which I am certain that relationship is the reason why we're seeing what we're seeing.
Yeah.
That is, interest rates are going up, home values are going a little bit lower. The homes are lasting on the market longer
Mhm.
because of what we were seeing 4 or 5 months ago. You had sellers that would put the house on the market, get 50,000 over asking price, and sell it within 30 days.
Right. I think we're seeing multiple things happening right now, which is why I can only tell you what is happening and then tell you what it's going to lead to in the future potentially. But what we're seeing is, like you said, we were seeing those crazy over asking, and then once interest rates hit an alarming level and affordability dropped down, it hasn't. I mean, there was an article, I think Wall Street Journal said that this is the worst time to buy a home in 40 years.
Why?
Interest rates and the fact that equity is still built in to these homes. I mean, these are homes that have gone up, but I'm going to address it and maybe speak to what's going to happen in the future, because these are the headlines people are reading, and these are headlines that we need to acknowledge do have truth into them. Is that there's equity that's been built up over the last 2 years, but with interest rates, the equity hasn't dropped in a way that you would say, okay, owning a home is now more affordable than it was 2 years ago, for example. It's getting less affordable, but I think what we're seeing is that this lack of inventory is going to be creating, I think, this narrative for a longer amount of time. We're seeing the inventory drop because there was a lot of people that very hastily put their homes, and I saw it within my own business, between about June to August, people rushed to put their homes on the market and said, okay, we need to get our home sold while the equity is still packed in before it slumps down. And so I think a big surge of that inventory that we saw was from folks that were like, let's just sell while it's still somewhat hot. So I think what we need to pay attention to, because I'm not going to say I know now what's going to happen, but I think there is at least a need to watch with the inventory going back down. Are we going to return to a low inventory market? And I think that Wall Street Journal article is correct, but I see very few ways in which it's now going to become more affordable to own a home. I'm looking at prices right now, and I think the prices are going to continue to go down. There's no way that we're not going to see a 5 to 10% drop in housing prices in the next year. That's going to happen.
Well, here's what I am not a conspiracy theorist, but maybe it's going to sound like I am. Why are we talking so much about the housing market in a negative light and not the rental market?
Yes, yes.
What we're seeing.
This is what it's going to do, though, and this is, I think, why it's so important. People need to be focused in on what. I guess the bigger question I'm trying to address is the folks that are saying it'd be better for me to wait 6 months for the market to adjust, because I don't think it's going to be more affordable in 6 months to purchase a home. And I'm not saying this because I have some sort of dog in the fight, or I mean, I do.
You do.
I do,
but
but
you're trying to be real.
I'm trying to be real here, in that from what I'm seeing, rents are projected, they were going to go up 10% year over year. They're now projected to go up 15% year over year.
They sure are. And there was a
Yeah.
recent article in the
Yeah.
Oregonian where you're seeing
Yeah.
renters
Yeah.
whose rent is being raised 30%.
Yes. And that was in affordable housing in Hillsborough.
Yes.
So
The people that need the most support are always
Yeah.
the people that are going
Yeah.
to get the least